Commander Zekthar stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. He had served the Vakran Empire for 30 years, and in all that time, he had never seen an enemy vessel in this sector. The Crimson Nebula was deep inside Empire territory, thousands of light years from any border. No alien species dared to come here. The punishment for trespassing was always the same: complete destruction. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of machines. Zekthar's crew worked at their stations, monitoring sensors and checking systems. It was supposed to be another boring patrol, just like the hundreds before it. The commander poured himself a cup of hot brew and settled into his command chair. In 2 more hours, they would complete their route and return to the fleet base. Then everything changed. A sharp alarm pierced the silence. The sensor operator, a young Vakreen named Telek, jerked upright in his seat. His scales turned pale with shock. "Commander, long-range sensors are detecting something." "A ship, sir." "A very large ship." Zekthar set down his cup. "Identification?" "Unknown, sir. The computer cannot match it to any known design in our database." Telek's fingers moved rapidly across his control panel. "Wait, this is impossible." "The energy signature? It's coming from inside Empire space, not from the border." "That cannot be correct. Run a diagnostic on the sensors." Zekthar stood and walked toward the sensor station. "Equipment malfunctions happen sometimes, especially near nebulas. Sensors are functioning perfectly, Commander." Telek looked up, his eyes wide with confusion. "The vessel is approximately 2 million kilometers away, moving at sublight speeds. Its mass is enormous, 3 times the size of our heavy cruisers." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member turned to look at their commander. Zekthar felt a cold sensation in his chest. In 3,000 years of Empire history, no alien vessel had penetrated this deep into their territory. The Vakran had the most powerful military in the galaxy. Their technology was superior to every other species. How could something this large slip past their border defenses? "Get me a visual," Zekthar ordered. The main screen flickered. The stars disappeared, replaced by an image of the unknown ship. It was massive and angular, covered in armor plating. Strange symbols were painted on its hull in white. The design was brutal and efficient, with none of the elegant curves of Vakran engineering. Weapons bristled from every surface. Large turrets, missile pods, and dozens of smaller gun emplacements covered the ship, like the spines of a predator. "Magnify those symbols," Zekthar said quietly. The computer zoomed in on the hull markings. Letters appeared in a language the Vakran had seen before, though rarely. English. Human writing. "Sir, the computer has identified the vessel's origin." Telek's voice shook slightly. "It's human." Several crew members gasped. Zekthar felt his scales tighten with surprise. Humans, that was impossible. The Vakran had encountered humanity 40 years ago, during a routine exploration mission. They had studied the species carefully. Humans were confined to 3 small star systems near the galaxy's outer rim. They had basic space travel, simple weapons, and primitive technology. The Empire had classified them as limited threat and moved on. There were more important species to conquer. "Are you certain?" Zekthar demanded. "Yes, Commander. The computer has translated the hull markings. The ship is called UESN Indomitable, United Earth Space Navy." Zekthar felt confusion mixing with anger. How did humans build something like this? More importantly, how did they find the Crimson Nebula? This sector's location was classified information, known only to the Empire's highest military officials. The nearest human world was thousands of light years away. "What is its current heading?" Zekthar asked. Telek checked his instruments. His face went even paler. "Commander, the ship is on a direct course for the Throne World." Now genuine alarm spread through the bridge. The Throne World was the heart of the Vakran Empire, home to their Emperor and the Supreme Command. It was the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy, surrounded by fleets and orbital weapons platforms. But it was also supposed to be secret. No alien species knew its exact location. Zekthar made his decision quickly. He had not survived 30 years of military service by being cautious. "Send an emergency transmission to Fleet Command. Tell them we have an unidentified human vessel in Sector 7, possible hostile intent. Then signal the rest of our battle group. All ships are to converge on our position immediately." "Yes, sir." Within minutes, 4 more Vakran cruisers appeared from different directions. They were sleek, deadly warships, each carrying enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The 5 ships formed a battle formation around the human vessel, boxing it in from all sides. Zekthar opened a communication channel. Unidentified human vessel. This is Commander Zekthar of the Vakran Imperial Fleet. You have entered restricted Empire space without authorization. Your presence here is an act of war. Power down your weapons and engines immediately. Prepare to be boarded. You have 60 seconds to comply, or you will be destroyed. The message was transmitted in 200 different languages, including English. Zekthar waited, watching the human ship carefully. It continued moving forward, showing no signs of stopping or slowing down. The weapons on its hull remained active, their targeting systems scanning the Vakran ships. 50 seconds passed, then 60. No response came. Zekthar felt his anger growing. Did these humans not understand the danger they were in? Did they think the Empire was weak? He opened the channel again, his voice harder this time. Human vessel, this is your final warning. Stop immediately or face destruction. This time there was a response. A voice came through the speakers, calm and almost casual. It spoke in English, which the computer immediately translated. UESN Indomitable to Vakran vessels. We're just passing through. Stand down and nobody gets hurt. For a moment, Zekthar could not speak. He stared at the communication panel in disbelief. The human was telling him to stand down. The audacity was stunning. In 3,000 years of Empire history, no species had ever spoken to the Vakran this way. They were the conquerors, the masters of this galaxy, and now this primitive human was giving him orders? Around the bridge, his crew looked equally shocked. Some seemed confused. Others appeared angry. Zekthar felt his pride wounded. This insult could not be tolerated. Target their engines, he commanded coldly. Fire warning shots. Show them what happens when you disrespect the Empire. The weapons officer nodded and entered commands. Energy weapons charged with a rising whine. Then all 5 Vakran cruisers fired simultaneously. Brilliant blue plasma bolts streaked through space toward the human battleship. The shots were carefully aimed to miss the hull by a few hundred meters. They were meant as a demonstration, a show of power to make the humans surrender. The plasma bolts would pass close enough for the humans to feel their heat through their shields. But something unexpected happened. The human ship's defensive systems activated. Small turrets along its hull tracked the incoming fire with impossible precision. They fired back, filling space with thousands of small projectiles. The plasma bolts hit this wall of metal and exploded harmlessly, never reaching the ship. Zekthar leaned forward in his seat, watching carefully. That defensive system was impressive. More impressive than it should be for such a primitive species. Then the human voice came through the speakers again. This time there was a hint of amusement in the tone. That was adorable. Last warning. The words hung in the air. Adorable. The human had called their weapons adorable. Zekthar's scales flushed dark with rage. His claws dug into the armrests of his chair. Enough of this. All ship, he said quietly, his voice filled with cold fury. Target the human vessel. Full weapons power. Destroy them. The order was given. 5 Vakran cruisers unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons fired in rapid succession, filling space with deadly blue energy. Missile tubes opened and released swarms of smart projectiles, each one capable of tracking and destroying its target. Point defense lasers added their own deadly light to the barrage. It was the kind of firepower that could destroy a space station or level a city. The weapons converged on the human battleship from all directions. There was nowhere to run, no way to dodge. The Vakran crew watched their displays, waiting for the inevitable. The human ship would be vaporized in seconds. Its shields would fail, its hull would melt, and its crew would die before they even knew what happened. But the human ship did not die. A shimmering barrier appeared around the Indomitable, a defensive shield that glowed bright as it absorbed the plasma fire. The shield flickered and pulsed but held firm. Not a single plasma bolt reached the hull. Meanwhile, the same defensive turrets that had fired before now worked at full capacity. Thousands of small projectiles per second streamed from the turrets, creating a metal wall in space. The missiles hit this barrier and exploded uselessly, their fragments spinning away into the void. On Zekthar's bridge, the crew stared in silence. Telik checked his sensors 3 times, not believing what he was seeing. Commander, their shields are holding. All of our fire is being deflected or absorbed. Zekthar felt something he had not experienced in many years. Doubt. How is this possible? The Vakran had fought hundreds of species across the galaxy. Their weapons were designed to overwhelm any known shield technology. A single cruiser could destroy most alien warships. 5 cruisers firing together should have obliterated anything in their path. Yet the human ship floated there untouched. Its shields barely seemed strained. "Increase power to weapons," Zekthar ordered. "All ships, continuous fire. Don't stop until that ship is destroyed." The barrage continued. Energy weapons fired until their capacitors ran hot. Missiles launched until the tubes needed to reload. For 3 full minutes, 5 Vakran warships poured everything they had into destroying one human vessel. And still the Indomitable survived. Inside the human battleship, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on her own bridge watching the light show outside. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had served in the United Earth Space Navy for 25 years, working her way up from ensign to admiral. She had commanded ships through asteroid fields, pirate raids, and the dangerous early days of human exploration. But this was the moment her entire career had been building toward. "Status report," she said calmly. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Reeves, checked his displays. "Shields at 87% and holding, Admiral. Their weapons are powerful, but nothing our defensive systems can't handle. Point defense is performing perfectly. We've destroyed 643 missiles so far. Casualties? None. The crew is at battle stations, all systems green." Chen nodded. She touched a control on her command chair. "This is Admiral Chen to all hands. The Vakran have made their choice. They fired first. Now they'll learn what happens when you pick a fight with Earth." She closed the shipwide channel and looked at her weapons officer. "Lieutenant Park, are our railguns ready?" "Yes, ma'am." All 6 main guns charged and loaded. "We have a firing solution on all 5 enemy vessels." "Hold fire for now," Chen said. She opened a communication channel to the Vakran ships. "Vakran Commander, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the UESN Indomitable. You've had your turn. Now it's ours. I'm going to give you one more chance to withdraw. Take your ships and leave, right now. This is the last offer you're going to get." On his bridge, Zekthar listened to the translation. His rage had grown beyond measure. This human was offering him mercy? Him, a commander of the Empire? The insult was unbearable. Did she think he was a coward? Did she think the Vakran would run from a single enemy ship? "Ignore her," he told his crew. "Keep firing. Divert power from engines to weapons if necessary. I want that ship destroyed now." Chen watched her tactical display. The Vakran ships were not withdrawing. More plasma fire splashed against her shields. More missiles were shredded by her point defense. She sighed quietly. She had hoped it would not come to this, but the Vakran had made their choice. "Lieutenant Park," she said softly. "Fire." "Yes, ma'am." Firing railgun 1. Deep inside the Indomitable, machinery came to life. Magnetic coils activated in sequence, building enormous power. A single tungsten rod, weighing 300 kilograms and shaped like a spear, was accelerated down a rail that stretched nearly the entire length of the ship. In a fraction of a second, the rod reached 70% of light speed. It left the barrel and streaked toward the nearest Vakran cruiser. The Vakran had sophisticated sensors. They saw the projectile coming, but there was nothing they could do. The rod was moving too fast for their shields to properly deflect. It was too small for their point defense to target effectively. And it carried more kinetic energy than a nuclear bomb. The tungsten rod hit the Vakran cruiser just behind the command section. It punched through the shield as if the shield did not exist. It tore through the armor plating like paper. It ripped through bulkheads, equipment, and crew members without slowing down. It exited through the other side of the ship and continued into space, glowing white-hot from the friction. The cruiser did not explode. Instead, it simply broke apart. The impact had transferred so much energy that the ship's structure failed catastrophically. The front half twisted to the left. The rear half tumbled to the right. Atmosphere vented from 1,000 tears in the hull. Emergency lights flickered briefly before dying. The ship was dead in seconds. Zekthar watched in horror as one of his vessels died. His scales turned ice cold. His mind could not process what he had just seen. That was a Vakran warship, built with the finest technology in the galaxy, protected by shields that had withstood countless battles, and the human had destroyed it with a single shot. "Commander, the humans are firing again," Telek shouted. 3 more railguns fired simultaneously. 3 more tungsten rods accelerated to relativistic speeds. 3 more Vakran cruisers were hit. The projectiles punched through shields and armor like they were nothing. One cruiser lost its entire engine section and went dark. Another was hit directly in the magazine, causing a chain reaction of explosions that tore the ship in half. The third took a hit near the bridge. Everyone in the command section died instantly. In less than 10 seconds, 4 of Zekthar's 5 ships were destroyed or crippled. Only his flagship remained intact. "Emergency jump," Zekthar screamed. "Plot a course to the nearest fleet base. Maximum speed." The navigation officer's hands shook as he entered commands. "Charging the jump drive, Commander. 30 seconds to activation." Those were the longest 30 seconds of Zekthar's life. On the screen, the human battleship rotated slowly, its massive railguns tracking his ship. His crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to get the jump drive ready faster. Behind them, the wreckage of their sister ships tumbled through space, fires burning in the torn hulls. 20 seconds, the navigator reported. Then alarms shrieked across the bridge. The jump drive's status indicators turned red. The display showed the drive powering down instead of charging up. "What's happening?" Zekthar demanded. "The humans, sir. They're transmitting some kind of jamming signal. It's interfering with our jump calculations. The computer won't activate the drive while the signal is active. It's a safety feature to prevent jumping into a star or planet." Zekthar felt true fear for the first time in his career. They were trapped, weapons that could destroy them in a single shot, shields that could withstand everything they had, and now technology that prevented them from escaping. What were these humans? The communication channel activated. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge, calm and cold. "Vakran, Commander, I told you what would happen. You fired first. You had your chance to walk away. Now," there was a pause, "now you don't get to run." On the Indomitable's bridge, Chen watched the last Vakran cruiser trying desperately to escape. She felt no pleasure in this. War was never something to enjoy, but it was something she was very, very good at. "Launch fighters," she ordered. "Boarding action." "I want their commander alive." "Yes, ma'am." The Indomitable's hangar bays opened. Small craft shot out into space, moving with incredible speed and agility. They were human fighters, each one carrying a pilot in powered armor. The fighters streaked toward Zekthar's ship like a pack of hunting animals closing in on wounded prey. The human fighters moved like nothing Zekthar had ever seen. Vakran pilots were trained for years to master their craft. They flew with precision and discipline. But these humans flew with something else entirely. They flew with aggression and creativity, pulling maneuvers that should have torn their ships apart. They dodged, rolled, and accelerated in ways that defied the normal rules of space combat. "Fire on those fighters," Zekthar ordered. "Don't let them get close." The cruiser's point defense guns activated, tracking the incoming targets. Laser fire cut through space in precise patterns, but the human pilots seemed to anticipate every shot. They jinked and weaved, their small ships dancing between the deadly beams. A few lasers scored glancing hits, but the fighter's armor absorbed the damage and kept coming. One fighter got close enough to launch something. A small projectile shot from under its wing and streaked toward the Vakran cruiser. It hit the hull and exploded, but not with fire. Instead, it released a burst of electromagnetic energy. The cruiser's shields flickered and failed. More fighters launched similar weapons. Within seconds, the last Vakran ship was completely defenseless. "Shields are down," Telek reported, his voice cracking with panic. "Hull breach in sections 7, 12, and 19. They're cutting through the armor." Zekthar watched his displays in growing horror. The human fighters were using some kind of cutting torch, burning through his ship's hull in multiple locations. He could see the interior layouts on his screen. The humans were targeting specific areas: the hangar bay, the main corridors, and the barracks where his soldiers waited. "Seal all bulkheads. Deploy security teams to repel boarders." Throughout the cruiser, Vakran warriors rushed to defensive positions. They were elite troops, the best the Empire could produce. Each soldier had trained since childhood in combat. They wore advanced armor and carried plasma rifles. They had fought in dozens of campaigns against dozens of species. They had never lost a ground battle. The first human came through the breach in Hangar Bay 3. The cutting torch had created a hole just large enough for a person to fit through. Atmosphere rushed out into space, creating a howling wind. Emergency force fields activated to contain the breach, but it was too late. The humans were already inside. The human warrior was massive. He stood over 2 meters tall, but most of that height was the powered armor he wore. It was thick and angular, painted dark gray with white markings. The helmet had a blank faceplate that showed no features. In his hands, he carried a weapon that looked primitive, a simple rifle that fired metal bullets using chemical explosives. By Vakran standards, it was ancient technology. 6 Vakran soldiers opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts hit the human from multiple angles. The armor absorbed the first few shots, glowing hot where the energy struck. But the soldier did not fall. He did not even slow down. He simply raised his rifle and fired back. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Not the clean hiss of plasma weapons, but the brutal thunder of explosive propellant. Bullets tore through Vakran armor as if it was made of cloth. 2 soldiers fell immediately, dead before they hit the ground. The others dove for cover, but the human kept firing. His bullets punched through storage crates and equipment. 1 Vakran warrior tried to hide behind a maintenance bot. The human's bullets went through the bot and through the warrior behind it. In 15 seconds, all 6 Vakran soldiers were dead or dying. More humans came through the breach. They moved in teams, covering each other with precise military discipline. They cleared the hangar bay in minutes, killing every Vakran defender they encountered. Then they moved deeper into the ship. On the bridge, Zekthar listened to the reports coming in. Every security team he sent was being destroyed. The humans were pushing through his ship like an unstoppable wave. Their armor was too strong. Their weapons were too powerful. And they fought with a savagery that shocked the Vakran soldiers, who were used to more civilized warfare. "Sir, they've reached Deck 4, Telek said. His voice was barely a whisper now. "They're heading for the bridge." Zekthar looked at the security display. He could see the humans advancing through his ship. Behind them lay a trail of destruction. Broken equipment, sealed doors torn from their frames, and bodies. So many bodies he had one last card to play. Release the Praetorians. His crew looked at him in shock. The Praetorians were the Empire's elite warriors. They were 3 meters tall, heavily muscled and genetically enhanced for combat. Each one could tear apart a normal soldier with their bare claws. They wore the finest armor the Empire could produce. They carried experimental energy weapons that could melt through almost anything. Only 5 Praetorians were stationed on his ship, but 5 should be more than enough. The Praetorians met the humans on Deck 3, in a wide corridor near the ship's main reactor. The 2 forces faced each other across 20 meters of empty space. The Praetorians roared their challenge, a sound designed to freeze prey with fear. They charged forward with incredible speed. The humans opened fire. Their bullets sparked off the Praetorian armor at first. The armor was strong enough to resist, but the humans kept firing. They aimed for the joints, the weak points where the armor plates met. Bullets found gaps and pushed through. 1 Praetorian went down with bullets in both knees. Another took hits to the neck seal and fell clutching his throat. The 3 remaining Praetorians reached the humans and attacked with their claws. One grabbed a human soldier and tried to tear him apart. But the powered armor held. The human inside punched back with his armored fist. The punch carried the full force of the armor's servo motors behind it. It caved in the Praetorian's chest plate and broke the warrior's ribs. The Praetorian dropped, gasping for air that wouldn't come. A second Praetorian swung his energy blade at a human. The blade cut through the armor's shoulder plate. But before he could finish the attack, 3 other humans shot him from different angles. Dozens of bullets found every weak point in his armor. He collapsed in a pool of his own blood. The last Praetorian realized he was alone. He looked at his dead comrades, then at the humans advancing toward him. For the first time in his life, he felt something the Vakran rarely experienced. He felt fear. He turned and ran. The humans let him go. They had a mission to complete. Zekthar watched it all on his displays. He watched his best warriors die. He watched his ship fall to these human invaders. And he finally understood the terrible truth. The Empire had been wrong. Humanity was not primitive. They were not weak. They had been quiet, building their strength in the shadows. And now they had revealed themselves. The bridge doors exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through the breach, their weapons sweeping the room. Zekthar's bridge crew raised their hands in surrender. They were scientists and operators, not fighters. They knew when a battle was lost. A human walked through the smoke. He was smaller than the soldiers, wearing lighter armor with an officer's markings. He removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face and cold eyes. He looked around the bridge, taking in every detail. Then his eyes settled on Zekthar. "Commander Zekthar, I presume?" The human spoke through a translation device. I'm Captain Miller, United Earth Space Navy Marines. On behalf of Admiral Chen, you are now a prisoner of war. Order your crew to stand down. Zekthar felt his pride warring with his survival instinct. Every part of his training told him to fight to the death. But he had seen what these humans could do. Fighting now would just mean dying for no reason. I surrender, he said quietly. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. Captain Miller nodded. Smart choice. You and your crew will be transferred to the Indomitable. Move slowly. Keep your hands visible and nobody else needs to die today. Zekthar and his surviving crew were marched through their own ship at gunpoint. Zekthar saw the damage the humans had caused. Blast marks on the walls, bodies of his soldiers lying where they fell, equipment destroyed. His beautiful ship turned into a wreck in less than an hour. They reached a docking tube that connected to the human battleship. As Zekthar stepped through the airlock, he left his ship for the last time. He left behind his career, his honor, and everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. The inside of the Indomitable was clean and efficient. Human crew members moved with purpose through the corridors. They looked at the Vakrin prisoners with curiosity but not hatred. Zekthar found that almost worse. These humans had destroyed his battle group, killed hundreds of his crew, and captured his ship. And they treated it like just another day at work. They were led to a holding area with transparent cells. The other Vakrin survivors were already there, looking defeated and lost. Zekthar was separated from his crew and taken to a different cell. A private one. He sat on the simple bench and stared at the wall. Outside his cell, human guards stood watch. They spoke quietly to each other in their language, laughing occasionally at some private joke. Zekthar felt numb. In one day, his entire worldview had collapsed. Hours passed. Then the cell door opened. A human woman walked in. She was older, with gray hair and the kind of presence that commanded respect without demanding it. She wore an admiral's uniform. Zekthar recognized her immediately from her voice. Admiral Sarah Chen looked at him for a long moment. Then she pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. We need to talk, she said simply. Admiral Chen sat in the chair, studying Zekthar with calm, intelligent eyes. She did not look angry or triumphant. She looked tired, like someone who had done a difficult job and found no pleasure in it. I know you have questions, she said. So do I, but let me start by clearing up the obvious one. You're wondering how this happened. How did primitive humanity suddenly appear in your space with weapons that could destroy your ships? How did we find the location of your most secret territory? Zekthar said nothing. His pride kept him silent even though he desperately wanted answers. Chen smiled slightly. The silent treatment. I understand. You feel humiliated, defeated. Your entire species has built its identity around being the strongest, the most advanced, and now you've learned that isn't true. That's a hard thing to accept. She leaned back in her chair. But I'm going to tell you the truth anyway, because you need to understand what's about to happen. She pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed a star map of the galaxy. 40 years ago, your people found Earth, Chen said. First contact. Your explorers studied us for a few weeks, decided we were primitive and unimportant, and left. They classified humanity as limited spacefaring capability and moved on. Do you know what that classification meant to us? Zekthar finally spoke. You were deemed no threat to the Empire. Exactly. No threat. Chen's smile disappeared. But you made a mistake. A big one. You assumed that because our technology was primitive, we would stay primitive. You assumed we were like all the other species you've conquered. Slow to learn. Slow to adapt. Content with what we had. She manipulated the hologram. The star map zoomed in, showing human space. 3 star systems, just as the Vakrin records indicated. But that's not what we are, Chen continued. Humans are curious. When we met your explorers, we saw technology that was hundreds of years ahead of ours. Energy shields. Faster than light travel. Plasma weapons. And you know what our reaction was? It wasn't fear. It wasn't worship. It was excitement. Because if you could build those things, that meant they were possible. And if they were possible, we could figure out how to build them too. The hologram changed. It showed images of human scientists working in laboratories, engineers building prototypes, test pilots flying experimental ships. We studied everything your explorers left behind, Chen said. Sensor readings, radiation signatures, even the particles your ships left in their exhaust. We analyzed it all. Our best minds worked on it for years. and slowly we started to understand your technology. We couldn't copy it exactly. Our industrial base was different, our materials science wasn't advanced enough, but we could create our own versions. Different designs, but similar effects. Zekthar felt a chill run through him. You reverse-engineered Vakran technology. Some of it. The rest we invented ourselves. That's another thing about humans, Commander. We're very good at taking ideas and improving them. Your plasma weapons are elegant and efficient. But our railguns? Simpler, cheaper to produce, and they hit harder. Your shields use exotic particles and complex field generators. Ours use brute force electromagnetic fields. Less sophisticated, but just as effective and much easier to maintain. The hologram changed again. Now it showed dozens of ships under construction in massive orbital facilities. We spent 40 years preparing, Chen said quietly. We built ships. We trained crews. We developed new weapons and tactics. And most importantly, we watched you. We sent scout ships into your territory, small, stealthy vessels that your sensors couldn't detect. They followed your patrol routes. They mapped your installations. They intercepted your communications. For 40 years, we studied the Vakran Empire. That's impossible, Zekthar protested. Our sensor networks would have detected any intrusion. Your sensor networks look for energy signatures and drive emissions. Our scout ships used completely passive propulsion. Solar sails and gravity assists. No engines to detect. They drifted through your space like ghosts, watching and learning. Zekthar felt sick. 40 years. For 40 years, humans had been spying on the Empire and nobody had noticed. The thought was horrifying. Chen manipulated the hologram again. The display showed images of Vakran worlds. But these weren't military targets. They were civilian planets. Zekthar saw cities burning. He saw populations being forced into labor camps. He saw ships carrying slaves from one world to another. He saw evidence of atrocities that the Empire had committed across centuries of conquest. We learned something else while we watched you, Chen said, her voice hardening. We learned what kind of civilization the Vakran Empire really is. You call yourselves the Guardians of Galactic Order. You claim you bring peace and stability to the galaxy, but that's a lie, isn't it? Zekthar looked away from the images. He had seen such things before during his career. Every Vakran officer had. It was simply how the Empire operated. Conquered species were put to work. Resistance was crushed. Resources were extracted. It was the natural order of things. The strong ruled and the weak served. We watched you conquer the Helian people, Chen continued. A peaceful species of artists and philosophers. You bombed their cities because they refused to surrender. 5 billion dead in a week. We watched you enslave the Korthi. An entire species now works in your mines and factories, bred like animals for labor. We watched you sterilize the homeworld of the Vex because they dared to rebel. You poisoned their atmosphere and left them to die slowly over months. Those were military necessities, Zekthar said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, Chen said flatly. They were atrocities, and that's why we're here. That's why the Indomitable and 46 other human battleships are currently positioned throughout your territory. We're not here to conquer you, Commander. We're here to stop you. Zekthar's head snapped up. 47 ships? You have 47 warships in Empire space? We do. All arrived simultaneously 3 days ago while your attention was focused on your border with the Trell Confederacy. Your forces are spread out dealing with that conflict you deliberately started, which means your interior is relatively undefended. Our ships are currently near your major military installations, your shipyards, your command centers. And you never saw us coming. Chen stood and walked to the cell's transparent wall. She looked out at her ship's corridor. I'm going to make you an offer, Commander. Actually, it's not an offer. It's going to happen whether you help or not. But you can choose to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. What do you want? Zekthar asked. Chen turned back to face him. I want you to contact your Emperor. I want you to arrange a direct communication channel. Because I have a message to deliver to him and to the entire Vakran Empire. The Emperor does not negotiate with prisoners. He will with me. Because if he doesn't, 47 human battleships are going to start destroying his military infrastructure. We'll do it systematically and thoroughly, and there's nothing he can do to stop us. Zekthar laughed bitterly. You're insane. You have 47 ships. The Empire has 10,000. Even with your superior weapons, you cannot win. You're right, Chen admitted. In a straight fight, we'd lose eventually. But we don't plan to fight straight. We plan to fight smart. We'll hit your shipyard so you can't replace losses. We'll destroy your supply depots so your fleets can't maintain operations. We'll strike your communication network so your forces can't coordinate. And while we're doing that, we'll be broadcasting evidence of your crimes to every species in the galaxy." She pulled up another hologram. This one showed a list of species names. Dozens of them. All the peoples you've conquered and enslaved. We've been in contact with their resistance movements. We've been supplying them with weapons and intelligence. The moment we give the signal, they'll rise up. Your empire will face rebellions on 100 worlds simultaneously. You'll be fighting a war on every front, and you won't have the resources to win them all. Zekthar stared at the list. He recognized many of the names. Helion, Korthi, Vex, dozens of others. Species that should have been broken and defeated. But according to Chen, they were ready to fight back. "You're planning to destroy the Empire," he said quietly. "No," Chen corrected. "We're planning to free the galaxy from the Empire. There's a difference. We don't want to kill the Vakran people. We just want to end your government's reign of terror. If your emperor is smart, he'll realize he's lost and surrender peacefully. If he's not," she shrugged, "then we'll do this the hard way." She walked back to the chair and sat down again. "So, Commander Zekthar, will you help me contact your emperor? Or would you prefer to watch your civilization collapse from inside this cell?" Zekthar closed his eyes. He thought about his career, his loyalty to the Empire, his oath to serve until death. But he also thought about what he had seen today. The ease with which the humans had destroyed his battle group, the evidence of Empire crimes displayed so casually, the revelation that 47 human warships were currently inside Vakran territory, undetected and ready to strike. The Empire had made a terrible mistake 40 years ago. They had dismissed humanity as insignificant, and now that mistake was going to cost them everything. He opened his eyes and looked at Admiral Chen. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll help you contact the Emperor." The communication took hours to arrange. Emperor Thakron did not normally speak with prisoners or aliens. But when his military advisors told him that a human fleet was inside Empire space, when they showed him the wreckage of Zekthar's battle group, when they explained that 47 unknown vessels were positioned near critical installations, he agreed to listen. The holographic transmission appeared in the Emperor's throne room. It showed Admiral Chen standing on the bridge of the Indomitable, with Zekthar visible in the background. Around the throne room stood the Empire's highest military commanders, its political advisors, and its intelligence chiefs. They all watched the human admiral with mixture of curiosity and contempt. Emperor Thakron himself sat on his throne of carved stone. He was old, even for a Vakran. He had ruled for 60 years and conquered a dozen species during his reign. He looked at the human female with cold eyes. "So," he said, "you are the one causing this disturbance. You have entered our territory without permission. You have destroyed our ships. You have taken our citizens prisoner. These are acts of war." "Yes, they are," Chen agreed calmly. "Your commander fired on my ship first. We defended ourselves. But you're right. This is war, and I'm here to discuss the terms of your surrender." The Vakran in the throne room hissed in outrage. Several military commanders reached for their weapons. The Emperor raised a hand, silencing them. "You dare to speak of our surrender? You have 47 ships. We have 10,000. You are one species. We command the loyalty of 50 conquered races. What makes you think we would ever surrender to you?" Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Because, Emperor, you're about to learn what it means to fight humanity. And by the time you're done learning, your empire will be over." She manipulated a control on her wrist. The holographic display expanded, filling the throne room. It showed a star map with dozens of red dots scattered throughout Vakran territory. "These are human warships," Chen explained. "Not 47? 150. The first wave was just scouts. The real fleet arrived yesterday while we were talking. They're currently in position around every major military installation you have. Your shipyards at Velkron Prime. Your fleet bases at Cortesh and Shandor. Your weapons research facility on Nekton. Your command and control center at Vrak Station. All of them have human ships in orbit right now." The Emperor's scales paled slightly. His military commanders checked their own displays frantically. Reports started coming in. Confirmed sightings, sensor readings. The human was telling the truth. "You're bluffing," the Emperor said. "You could not have built so many ships without us noticing. We built them in our own space, in facilities you didn't know existed. Then we brought them here through routes your scouts never patrol. You were so confident in your superiority that you never considered we might be planning something like this. That was your first mistake. Chen's expression hardened. Your second mistake was thinking we'd just accept your empire's crimes. For 40 years, we've documented everything. The species you've enslaved, the worlds you've destroyed, the billions of deaths you've caused. We have evidence of all of it. And in 30 seconds, I'm going to broadcast that evidence on every communication frequency in the galaxy. Every species will see what you've done. Every conquered people will know the truth about their masters. You cannot do that, the Emperor said. But there was uncertainty in his voice now. Watch me. Chen pressed a button. Across the galaxy, on millions of worlds, every screen suddenly displayed the same images. Vakran ships bombing civilian cities. Slave camps where conquered peoples worked until they died. Execution chambers where dissenters were killed. Laboratory experiments on living subjects. Mass graves filled with the bodies of those who resisted. 50 years of Empire atrocities documented in horrifying detail. And with the images came a message, spoken in hundreds of languages. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy. For decades, the Vakran Empire has ruled through fear and violence. They have conquered peaceful species. They have enslaved entire populations. They have committed genocide against those who dared to resist. The images you are seeing are real. They are proof of crimes against all sentient life. Today, humanity offers you a choice. Join us in demanding justice. Help us end the Empire's reign of terror. Or stand aside and watch as we do it ourselves. But know this, the Empire's days are numbered. Freedom is coming. In the throne room, Emperor Thakron watched his Empire's secrets being exposed to the galaxy. He watched as the carefully constructed image of Vakran superiority crumbled. He could already imagine the chaos this would cause. The rebellions, the loss of faith among his own people, the breakdown of the fear that kept conquered species obedient. You have declared war on the greatest power in the galaxy, he said to Chen. We will crush you. We will find your homeworld and burn it to ashes. We will hunt down every human in space and execute them. Your species will regret this day. Chen's smile disappeared. No, Emperor. You will regret this day. Because you just made the worst decision of your life. You could have surrendered peacefully. You could have agreed to free the species you've enslaved and withdraw to your original territory. I would have been satisfied with that. But you chose violence instead. So now I'm going to show you what humanity does to those who threaten us. She cut the transmission. Within hours, the Vakran Empire mobilized for war. Fleets were recalled from border regions. Reserves were activated. 200 warships were dispatched to hunt down and destroy the nearest human vessel. It was the largest military operation the Empire had launched in 50 years. The battle happened in the void of Karesh, an empty region of space near the Empire's core worlds. The Vakran fleet consisted of 200 ships, from small corvettes to massive dreadnoughts. They surrounded a single human battleship that had remained in place, seemingly waiting for them. The Vakran commander, Fleet Admiral Korath, was confident. He had overwhelming numbers. His forces were well-trained and equipped with the finest weapons the Empire could produce. One human ship, no matter how advanced, could not stand against 200. He ordered the attack. The human ship was destroyed in the opening barrage. It broke apart under the concentrated fire of dozens of vessels. Victory seemed instant, but then something appeared on the sensors. More human ships decloaking all around the Vakran fleet. Not one ship, not 10, 50 human warships appeared out of nowhere, having hidden themselves with some kind of stealth technology the Vakran had never seen before. They had used the single battleship as bait, and the Vakran had taken it. What followed was not a battle. It was a massacre. The human ships moved with coordinated precision. Their targeting systems linked together, sharing information in real time. They focused fire on individual Vakran vessels, destroying them one by one with ruthless efficiency. Their railguns punched through shields. Their missiles overwhelmed point defenses. Their electronic warfare systems jammed Vakran communications, leaving the fleet unable to coordinate. Within 30 minutes, half the Vakran fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors tried to retreat, but the humans had positioned ships to cut off their escape routes. They were trapped, exactly like Zekthar had been trapped. Fleet Admiral Korath died when his flagship was hit by 3 railgun rounds simultaneously. The ship exploded, killing everyone aboard. His second-in-command tried to organize a fighting retreat, but it was hopeless. The humans were too fast, too accurate, too overwhelming. By the end of the battle, 183 Vakran ships had been destroyed. 17 managed to escape by abandoning their slower vessels and jumping away randomly. The humans let them go. They wanted survivors to carry the message back to the Empire. The message was simple: do not fight humanity. You cannot win. News of the disaster spread throughout the Empire. 200 ships destroyed by 50. The finest fleet ever assembled defeated in less than an hour. The loss was catastrophic, but worse than the loss was what it represented. The Vakran were not invincible. They could be beaten. They could be killed. And across the galaxy, on hundreds of conquered worlds, people heard that message and understood. If the mighty Vakran could be defeated, then freedom was possible. The rebellion started the next day. On Hellion, the survivors of the genocide rose up against their Vakran occupiers. On Cortesh, slave workers seized weapons and fought their guards. On a dozen worlds, resistance movements that had been hiding for decades suddenly came out of the shadows. And they all carried weapons marked with human writing. Earth had kept its promise to supply them. Emperor Thakron watched his empire fracturing. He called emergency meetings with his advisors. They tried to formulate plans to contain the damage. But for every problem they solved, 3 more appeared. Fleets were needed everywhere at once. Resources were stretched thin. And the humans kept striking, destroying shipyards and supply depots, making it impossible to sustain military operations. 3 weeks after the war began, a human fleet appeared in orbit around the throne world itself. Not 47 ships, not 100. 150 human warships positioned above the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. They made no demands. They simply waited, their weapons pointed down at the world below. In his throne room, Emperor Thakron finally understood. He had lost. The Empire was dying. He could order his remaining forces to fight, and perhaps they would kill many humans before being destroyed. But in the end, the result would be the same. His empire would fall, his civilization would be broken, and the Vakran people would pay the price for his pride. Or he could surrender and perhaps save something of his people's future. It took him 3 days to make the decision. 3 days of watching his empire collapse around him. 3 days of receiving reports about rebellions and defeats. 3 days of counting the cost of his arrogance. On the 4th day, he contacted Admiral Chen and offered unconditional surrender. The terms were harsh but not impossible. The Vakran Empire would release all conquered species immediately. They would withdraw their military forces to their original 10-star systems. They would provide reparations to the peoples they had harmed. They would allow human observers to ensure compliance. And they would never again attempt to conquer another species. In return, humanity would cease hostilities. They would not occupy Vakran worlds. They would not demand regime change. They would allow the Vakran to rebuild, but as equals in the galaxy, not masters. The Emperor signed the treaty. The war was over. Zekthar watched the signing from his cell aboard the Indomitable. Admiral Chen had allowed him to see it on a display. When it was done, she came to visit him one last time. "You'll be released in a few days," she said. "You and your crew will be returned to your people. What you do after that is up to you." "We were the greatest power in the galaxy," Zekthar said quietly. "We ruled for 3,000 years, and you defeated us in 3 weeks." "You ruled through fear," Chen corrected. "We freed people through hope. That's the difference." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing, Commander. Some of your people are asking what humanity wants now, what our goal is. I'll tell you what I told your Emperor. We want to make sure this never happens again, to anyone. We're going to stay out here among the stars. We're going to watch. And if any species decides to follow the Vakran example, if anyone thinks they can conquer and enslave others, they'll find humanity standing in their way." She looked back at him. "Your empire learned an important lesson. The galaxy has a new protector now, and we don't sleep." Zekthar watched her leave. He sat alone in his cell, thinking about everything that had happened. The Vakran had dismissed humanity as primitive and weak. They had thought themselves superior, and that arrogance had destroyed them. He wondered if his people would learn from this. If they would understand that strength was not just about weapons and fleets. It was about character, about principles, about standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. The humans had shown them a better way. Now it was up to the Vakran to follow it. Outside the Indomitable, the human fleet began to disperse. Some ships would stay to monitor the peace. Others would return to Earth. But all of them would remember this moment. The moment when humanity announced itself to the galaxy, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as guardians of freedom, and that legacy would endure long after the last human ship had returned home.